Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea was a mirror of molten silver when dawn rose over the western waters. Arya Stark stood at the prow of her ship, the Nymeria's Fang, her hands gripping the rail as wind teased her dark hair. She had sailed beyond every known shore, past the maps drawn by Meisters, past the whispers of sailors who feared the edge of the world. Behind her lay Westeros, the wars, the crowns, the ghosts of her family. Before her stretched the unknown. She had thought once that she would find peace on the sea. But peace was a stranger still. Every sunrise brought the same gnawing restlessness that had followed her since she was a girl in Winterfell's halls. She had been the wolf among strangers, the face without a name, the sword without a master. Now she was captain of her own ship, yet she still hunted something she could not name. It was during one of those pale dawns that the lookout shouted from the crow's nest. "Smoke to the west!" Arya raised her spyglass. On the horizon, faint and dark, a column of smoke curled against the sky. Not the low, steady haze of a village fire, but a rising, twisting plume, black and hot. Something was burning out there, far from any shore she knew. The crew gathered at the rail, murmuring. There were 9 of them now, hard-eyed, loyal, bound to Arya by coin and quiet respect. Old Rin from Gulltown, who knew the stars better than any Meister. Talia, the sharp-tongued woman who had once been a smuggler on the narrow sea. Alice Rivers, not the witch of the same name, but a quiet girl from the Vale, who'd followed Arya since Bravos. Could be wreckage, said Rin. A ship aflame, maybe. But what sets a ship afire in the middle of nowhere? Arya said nothing. She had heard whispers, faint and scattered, even this far west, of a winged shadow that struck in the night, of a beast that breathed fire over the sea. Sailors' tales, perhaps, or something more. She lowered the glass. We sail toward it. Talia frowned. Toward the smoke? Gods, girl, that's trouble if ever I saw it. Arya's gray eyes flashed. We didn't come this far to turn back at smoke. The crew obeyed as they always did. The Nymeria's Fang turned its dark prow westward, slicing through calm waters. As the day wore on, the wind grew restless, tugging at the sails. The air carried a strange scent, not salt and brine, but something scorched, sharp as burnt metal. By nightfall, the sea itself seemed uneasy. Waves slapped harder against the hull, and faint embers drifted on the wind. The smoke had grown thick, veiling the stars. Then they found the wreck. It was a great merchant ship, charred to the bones. The masts were snapped, sails burned away to ash. Bodies floated among the debris, sailors blackened by fire, faces twisted in fear. Arya's crew watched in silence as they drifted past. By the 7, murmured Rin. No cannon did this, no storm. Arya's gaze swept the water. Something had torn through the hull, not smashed, not crushed, but melted, as if the wood had been kissed by flame hotter than any forge. Alice made the sign of the mother. A dragon's work, she whispered. Talia scoffed, but her voice was thin. Dragons are dead, all of them, burned, slain, or flown into the clouds with their queen. Arya said nothing. She looked out at the Black Sea, remembering tales of Daenerys Targaryen, the dragon queen who had freed slaves and burned kings, the queen who had vanished into smoke and memory. But the memory of fire lingered. That night, Arya could not sleep. She sat alone on deck as the sea glimmered under a moon of bone-white light. The charred ship lay behind them, silent as a tomb. Ahead, the horizon was dark. But once, she thought she saw something move there, far off, a flicker of red against the black sky. A shadow, vast and winged, passing across the moon. Arya rose. Her hand found the hilt of needle, the little sword that had been with her through half her life. She whispered the words her father had taught her, long ago in Winterfell. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. But she was far from her pack now, far from any land, and somewhere beyond that horizon, a dragon, or something that men called a dragon, waited in the dark. The Nymeria's fang sailed on, its lanterns gleaming over restless waters as Arya Stark of Winterfell followed smoke and shadow into the edge of the world. By the time the next dawn bled across the horizon, the smoke had thinned, and the sea was a mirror of dull iron. The Nymeria's fang drifted through waters littered with ash and drifting planks, the ghosts of ships long dead. Arya stood beside the wheel, her eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for something she had already begun to dream about. Wings, flame, a glint of scales in the sunlight. For 3 days, they followed the trail. Each morning brought new signs: burned timbers, half-melted metal, and once, the skeleton of a whale washed ashore, its ribs blackened as though fire had danced upon its bones. The wind grew heavy with the scent of smoke and something else, a sharp metallic tang that stung the nose. On the 4th day, the sea changed. The waters deepened to an eerie green, and the current tugged them toward the west with steady insistence. "It's pulling us," said Rin, frowning at the compass that spun uselessly in its brass case. "Like the tide itself wants to drag us into the deep," Arya said. "Then let it." The old sailor looked at her as if she were mad, but none among them dared argue. They had seen her kill before, not in rage, but with the cold precision of one who had looked death in the eye and learned to call it by name. By midday, the fog came. It rolled across the sea like smoke from a giant's fire, swallowing the ship in a gray silence so thick that the mast itself faded from sight. The crew worked in whispers, their faces pale. Alice muttered prayers to the seven. Then, out of that heavy mist, the bell sounded. A deep metallic clang, once, twice, echoing across the water. "A ship!" cried Talia. But no ship appeared, only the fog and the slow tolling of that unseen bell. Arya moved to the bow, peering through the gray. She felt the hair on her arms rise, though the air was still. The fog thinned suddenly, and there it was. A shadow of land, jagged and steep, black cliffs rising from the sea like broken teeth. Upon one of those cliffs stood a tower, half collapsed, its stone walls crawling with vines. The bell hung from the ruin's edge, swaying gently though there was no wind. An island, small, ringed with reefs and dark sand. They dropped anchor in a cove. Arya took Needle at her side and stepped into the rowboat. Talia and Rin followed, the others staying aboard to guard the ship. The beach was littered with bones, the long white ribs of sea beasts, and something larger, older. Rin bent to touch one. "Seven save us. This is no whale." Arya crouched. The bone was blackened at the edge, hollow, light in her hand. It might once have belonged to a dragon. They climbed the narrow path to the tower. The fog thickened again, swallowing sound and sight until the world was only stone and silence. When they reached the top, they found the source of the bell, an old rope still tied to its rusted tongue, swaying with each faint breath of wind. And beneath it, someone had made camp. A ring of stones held the ashes of a fire, long cold. A cloak lay half buried in the dirt, torn and stained with blood. Near it, Arya found a scrap of parchment, the ink half faded. She brushed away the dirt and read aloud. The beast rises by moon's tide. Fire in the west, shadows in the deep. The worshippers wait. Rin swallowed. Worshippers? Talia crossed herself. Madmen, more like. Who else would follow such a creature? Before Arya could answer, a sound rose from the cliffs below, a distant rumble, deep and steady as thunder beneath the earth. The stones trembled beneath their feet. Rin looked to Arya. That came from the sea. They ran to the edge of the cliff. Below, the fog churned as if boiling, the surface of the water breaking in great dark ripples. And then, a shape rose from the depths. It was vast, long as the Nymearia's fang, scales glimmering dark as obsidian, eyes like molten gold. Steam hissed from its nostrils as it lifted its head to the sky. Its wings unfurled, and for an instant, the world seemed to darken beneath them. Talia stumbled back, whispering, "By all the gods, it's true." The creature roared, a sound that shook the very air. Fire burst from its throat, a jet of white flame that scorched the sea. Arya did not move. She watched the dragon, for there could be no doubt now, circle the island once before vanishing again into the mist, leaving only the hiss of cooling water and the echo of its cry. When silence returned, Arya spoke quietly. "We follow it." Rin stared at her as though she'd lost her senses. "You mean to hunt it?" "I mean to find it," she said, "and learn why it is here." That night, back aboard the Nymearia's Fang, the crew was restless. Some whispered that they should turn back, that no ship born of men should chase such a creature. Others watched Arya in silence, waiting for her word. She stood at the prow, the wind pulling at her cloak, eyes fixed on the black horizon. The dragon's roar still echoed in her bones. Long ago, she had hunted men, Freys, Lannisters, traitors whose names she had whispered to the darkness. But this was something greater, something older. "Tomorrow," she told the crew, "we sail west again. There are more islands ahead, and somewhere beyond them, our dragon." In the quiet that followed, no one dared to speak. The fog thickened once more, curling around the ship like smoke. And somewhere beyond it, wings moved through the night. The morning came gray and windless, and the Nymearia's Fang drifted like a ghost upon a breathless sea. The crew moved in silence, still shaken from what they had seen. Even the gulls dared not follow them now. The world seemed emptied of life, save for the slow creak of the timbers and the whisper of water against the hull. Arya stood beside the mainmast, sharpening needle by rote, her eyes fixed upon the west. She had slept little. All night, the dragon's roar had rolled through her mind like thunder. Not a dream, not madness, a sound too vast to be imagined. She remembered Bran's words, spoken long ago when she was still a girl in Winterfell. "There are more things in this world than we'll ever know, Arya." Back then, she had thought him a dreamer, lost in stories. But now she wondered if he had seen this very thing, a dragon not of the east, but of the far, forgotten west. By midday, they sighted more land, not one island, but many, scattered like broken stones across the sea. Some were barren and sharp, others clothed in strange, pale trees that shone silver in the mist. Smoke drifted from one of the larger isles, rising in a slow, steady column. "Another fire," said Rin, squinting through the spyglass, but no ship this time. Arya took the glass. On the shore below the smoke, she saw huts of driftwood and bone. People moved among them, thin, dark figures carrying spears. "Men," she said. "Or what's left of them," muttered Talia. "Gods, who could live in a place like this?" "The same kind who once lived under dragons," Arya replied. They brought the ship close to shore and lowered a boat. The tide pulled strong between the reefs, and it took near an hour to reach the shallows. As they drew closer, the islanders appeared on the beach. 24, perhaps more. Their skin was the color of weathered bronze, their hair long and braided with shells. They wore necklaces of teeth and bones that gleamed white against their chests. When Arya stepped onto the sand, they did not raise their weapons. Instead, one of them approached, a tall woman with eyes like sea glass and a cloak of scaled leather. "You come from the east," the woman said. Her voice was rough but clear. "Aye," Arya answered. "From Westeros." The woman tilted her head. "Then you have crossed far indeed. Few who sail from the east ever return." Arya glanced toward the smoke curling behind the huts. "We saw the fire on the sea. The creature that makes it. Does it come here?" The woman's gaze darkened. "You speak of Vazrak." "Vazrak," Arya repeated softly. The woman nodded. "The burning shadow. It came from the deep many moons ago. It hunts in the sky and sleeps beneath the mountain." She pointed inland, where a peak of black stone rose above the trees. "Those who anger it are devoured. Those who honor it are spared." Talia muttered, "So you worship it." The woman did not answer, but her eyes flashed like flint. "We give it what it demands. Fire must feed fire." Arya felt a chill despite the heat. "And what does it demand?" "Blood," the woman said simply. Behind her, men began to gather, some carrying bowls carved from skulls, others with torches that smoked in the damp air. Arya's hand drifted to needle. "We mean no harm," she said, "only to see the creature with our own eyes." The woman studied her for a long moment. "Few who seek Vazrak return to speak of what they saw, but if you wish to follow the fire, the path lies open." She turned and began to walk toward the forest. Arya motioned for Rin and Talia to follow. The woods were thick and silent, filled with trees that bled pale sap when cut. The air smelled faintly of ash. As they climbed toward the mountain, they passed strange carvings. Great spirals burned into the rocks, shapes that looked half like wings, half like flames. When they reached the foot of the peak, Arya saw the mouth of a cavern, yawning wide, ringed with scorched stone. Warm air breathed from within, carrying a faint glow. The woman stopped. "Beyond this lies the lair. We do not enter when the fires wake." Arya looked into the darkness. "When does it wake?" "When the moon bleeds," said the woman, pointing toward the eastern sky. The sun was sinking, and already the moon was rising pale and thin, rimmed in red. The woman's people began to chant softly, words low and rhythmic. Arya could not understand them, but she felt their weight, a prayer or a warning. She took a torch from one of them and stepped into the cavern. Rin followed reluctantly. Talia cursed under her breath, but came after. The tunnel wound deep beneath the mountain, the walls slick with black stone. Heat shimmered in the air. Soon the passage opened into a vast chamber, and there, beneath a ceiling of jagged rock, lay the dragon. It was sleeping, if dragons slept. Its scales were dark as forged iron, its wings folded close to its body. Smoke curled from its nostrils with every breath. Around it lay bones and ash, and beneath those, glimmers of gold and broken weapons, relics of those who had come before. Rin whispered, "Gods help us all." Arya took a slow step forward. The air burned her throat. She could feel the heat of it, the power sleeping in every breath of that monstrous form. Then one golden eye opened. The torch sputtered. Rin froze, his lips parting soundlessly, the dragon's gaze fixed upon Arya. For a long, suspended moment, the world was silent. Then it moved, a slow ripple, scales grinding like armor, wings stretching until they brushed the cavern walls. It exhaled, and a rush of air swept through the tunnel, scattering ash and sparks. Arya did not move, her heart hammered, but her eyes did not leave the creatures. There was no malice there, only a deep, weary intelligence, old as the world itself. And then she heard it, not a sound, not truly, but a whisper in her mind, a single word carried on the heat of its breath. Child. She staggered back, clutching the rock. The voice faded as quickly as it had come, leaving only the sound of the dragon's breath and the pounding of her own heart. Did you hear that? She whispered. But Rin and Talia only stared at her, pale with fear. The dragon closed its eyes again, curling into the darkness. Arya stood trembling, her torch guttering. Whatever this creature was, it was no mindless beast. It had known her, spoken to her. Outside, the moon climbed higher, red as blood, and from far above, echoing faintly down the mountain, came the chanting of the islanders, a hymn to fire and shadow. Arya looked once more upon the dragon's slumbering form and whispered, "I will return." And the dragon's tail, vast and heavy as a fallen tree, shifted once in reply. The air outside the cavern was cold, though the mountain still glowed faintly beneath the clouds. The islanders knelt along the path as Arya and her companions emerged, their torches flickering in the red moonlight. None spoke, but their chants had changed, softer now, reverent, almost fearful. The tall woman who had guided them inclined her head. "You have seen the shadow," she said. "Few return with breath still in their bodies." Arya met her gaze. "The dragon let us live." "For now," murmured the woman. "It waits, as it always has. It has slept for long years, but when the moon bleeds, it stirs, and soon it will hunger again." Rin spat into the dust. "You feed that thing blood and call it worship. It's murder." The woman's eyes narrowed. "We feed it, because if we do not, it takes what it pleases. It was the same when our fathers' fathers walked these shores. Fire has no mercy." Arya studied her a long moment. "Has no one tried to slay it?" The woman's voice held both pity and pride. "Men from the east have come with blades and steel ships. None returned. The fire does not die." The conversation ended there. The villagers withdrew into the shadows, and Arya led her people back toward the cove. When they reached the Nymeria's fang, Talia turned on Arya, her face pale with anger. "That thing spoke to you." Arya stopped short. "You heard it?" "No, but I saw your face. You were listening to something, weren't you?" Arya hesitated, then nodded once. "A voice, in my head, only a word." Rin crossed himself. "Then it's witchcraft, or worse. The Seven preserve us." "There are no gods here," said Arya quietly. "Only truth. And fire." She went below deck and shut herself in her cabin. The small lantern swung above her, throwing long shadows across the walls. She unrolled the scrap of parchment she had taken from the ruined tower, the one that had spoken of the worshippers and the beast in the west. The handwriting was clumsy, but the ink was dark, fresh enough that the words still bled slightly into the paper. Whoever had written it had not been dead long. She traced the final line with her finger. "The fire remembers." She did not know why, but the words chilled her more than the sea's wind. That night, she dreamed. She stood again in the cavern, though there was no torch in her hand, no crew beside her. The dragon's eyes glowed like suns. It spoke, but its mouth did not move. Child of winter, blood of wolves. Why do you follow the fire? Arya tried to answer, but no sound left her lips. You hunt death and call it truth. The voice whispered. You have worn many faces, but never your own. The dragon's breath washed over her, hot and dry as a desert wind. The walls of the cave began to melt, turning into rivers of molten stone. You cannot kill me, said the voice. You are me. She woke gasping, drenched in sweat, her hand gripping the dagger she had hidden beneath her pillow. The lantern had burned out. Only the faint glow of dawn filtered through the porthole. A cry sounded from above deck. She was on her feet, instantly. When she emerged, the world was red with sunrise, and something burned on the horizon. Another island, smaller, closer to the open sea. Columns of smoke rose from it like black banners. Rin met her at the rail. The dragon's been there, he said. You can see the fire still rising. Arya narrowed her eyes. Prepare the longboat. We're going ashore. Gods be damned, girl, Talia hissed. We've seen enough. That thing isn't sleeping anymore. It's hunting. Arya turned on her. Then I'll find what it hunts for. There was no arguing after that. The sea between the islands was rougher now, the waves streaked with ash. When they reached the shore, the air was thick with smoke and the stench of burnt flesh. The village, if it had ever been one, was gone. Only stones and bones remained. Among the ruins, Arya found what she had feared, the charred wreck of a ship, its hull marked with a carved wolf's head. She knelt, brushing away soot. It was a Westerosi vessel, small, armed for speed. Its name was half burned from the wood, but she could make out the letters, Snow's Bane. Westeros, she whispered. Someone else sailed west. In the wreck's shadow lay a body, or what remained of one, clad in a scorched leather jerkin. Around its neck hung a chain of Valyrian steel links, a maester's chain. Rin crossed himself again. A maester? What in the seven hells was a maester doing this far west? Arya searched the body. In a small pouch at the man's belt, she found a sealed cylinder of bronze. Inside was a scrap of parchment, the wax still half intact. The seal bore the mark of the citadel. She unrolled it and read aloud. Specimen recovered from the Shadowlands, winged lizard, size unknown, DNA of dragon confirmed, expedition to locate surviving lineage recommended. She frowned at the unfamiliar words, but understood the meaning well enough. The maesters had hunted dragons. They had followed the same trail she had, and paid with their lives. A shadow passed over her. She looked up. The sun vanished. The sky filled with black wings. The dragon descended, silent as falling snow, its eyes burning gold. It landed amid the ashes with a sound like thunder, wings folding in slow majesty. Its gaze fixed on Arya once more. Rin and Talia fell to their knees, but Arya stood her ground. The dragon exhaled, and ash whirled around her in a storm. Its voice returned, faint as thought. You seek truth in fire. Will you bear its mark? Arya's heart pounded. What are you? She whispered. I am what remains of dragons and of men. The ground trembled. The creature's great head lowered until its eye was level with hers. The blood that burned the world still burns within you, child of winter. The wolf and the dragon are one. Before Arya could speak, the beast reared back and roared, a sound that shattered stone and sky alike. The blast of its wings hurled her backward into the sand. When she looked up again, it was gone, rising into the red light of dawn like a black star. The island fell silent once more. Rin helped her to her feet. We can't fight that, Arya. No sword, no ship can stand against it. Arya brushed the soot from her face. Then we don't fight it." "What then?" Talia demanded. Arya looked toward the west, where the dragon had flown. Her voice was low, but her eyes were clear as winter ice. "We follow." Behind her, the sea boiled faintly where the dragon had passed. Ahead lay more islands, and beyond them, the unknown. The Nymeria's fangs sailed on, chasing fire into a sky that burned red with promise and ruin. And Arya Stark, child of winter, hunter of shadows, felt the stirrings of something older than fear. The pull of destiny, fierce and cold as the north wind itself. For 3 days and nights, the Nymeria's fang followed the trail of smoke that stretched across the western sea like a scar. The dragon's fire could be seen even from leagues away. Flashes of white heat beneath the clouds, glimmers of crimson flame reflected on the waves. The crew slept in turns, fearful that sleep itself might draw the creature's eye. Arya did not sleep at all. She stood at the prow, her face hard as the northern ice she had once called home. The wind tore at her hair, but she did not move, not even when the waves broke cold across her boots. The dragon's words still rang within her skull. The wolf and the dragon are one. What had it meant? Was it riddle, warning, or truth? She thought of Jon, her half-brother, her ghost of family left behind in the snows of the north. He too had the blood of dragons in him, though she had never truly understood what that meant. And now, across this far sea, the truth she sought might burn her as surely as it had burned him. The third dawn broke red and thick with mist. Rin leaned on the rail beside her. "The men are near spent," he said. "They whisper of turning back." "Let them whisper," Arya replied. He hesitated, then said softly, "You've a fire in you, girl, but fire burns both ways. If the beast means to destroy us, we'll not outsail it." Arya looked out over the sea. "If we die chasing something real. That's more than most can say." Before he could answer, the lookout's cry split the air. Land ahead, smoke rising. The fog thinned, revealing a vast island unlike the others, taller, greener, ringed by cliffs that shimmered as though carved from glass. At its heart rose a mountain wreathed in storm. Lightning flashed along its ridges, and every so often the mountain's crown glowed faintly red, as if something alive moved beneath the rock. The dragon had gone there. Arya knew it as surely as she knew her own name. They anchored the ship in a deep bay and climbed ashore through rain and mist. The island was silent, save for the wind sighing through black trees and the distant rumble of the mountain. Everywhere they walked, the ground was warm beneath their boots, and the air smelled faintly of ash. Halfway up the slope, they found ruins, a circle of black stone, weathered but still standing. Strange runes covered the pillars, written in a language none of them knew. In the center lay a basin filled with clear water. Arya knelt beside it and looked down. The water did not show her reflection. Instead, shapes flickered in its depths. Fire, wings, faces she had thought long lost. Her father's eyes, Sansa's hair bright as embers, Jon's shadow turning away. Then, faint and far, the dragon's golden gaze. She drew back sharply. "It sees me," she whispered. Talia muttered a curse. "Then pour it out and be done with it." But Arya only rose, eyes distant. "No, it called us here." As the sun began to sink, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the mountain came a roar, deeper than thunder, older than the sea. Birds burst from the cliffs, screaming, the air filled with heat and smoke. "The fire wakes," Rin breathed. The dragon emerged from the clouds, its wings blotted out the sun, its body burning with molten light. Flames streamed from its jaws, scattering sparks like falling stars. The crew fell to their knees, shielding their faces, But Arya stood tall. The dragon landed before her, the ground shaking with its weight. Its eyes burned like twin suns. When it spoke, the sound filled the world. "You have followed me farther than any man." "Why?" Arya's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. "To know what you are." "I am memory," said the dragon. "I am the breath of fire that once ruled the skies of men. I am the last of my kind, and the first of something new." "You speak like a man," Arya said. "Men made us," the dragon answered, "and in their pride, they unmade us. Your kind bound us in chains, bred us for war, and when we grew too strong, they burned us, yet our fire lived on, in blood, in stone, in song, even in you." The words struck her like a blade. "In me?" The creature bent its head lower until its breath warmed her face. "The wolf carries the dragon's spark. It sleeps within your veins, as it does in the blood of the one you call brother. The fire does not die, Arya Stark. It changes." She stared into the golden depths of its eyes and saw shapes moving there, images of old Valyria, of silver-haired kings, of dragons wheeling above burning cities. Then she saw something else, herself, standing before a blackened throne, flames licking her shadow. "No," she whispered, "that isn't me." "All fires choose what they will burn," the dragon said. "Some devour, some cleanse." Behind her, the mountain split with a deafening crack. Lava spilled like molten blood down its side, and the air grew thick with heat. The dragon's wings spread, vast and terrible. "The world forgets. I remember. Fire remembers." With a single beat of its wings, it rose into the storm. Lightning flashed across its scales, and for an instant, it seemed to vanish into the clouds. Rin seized Arya's arm. "We have to go! The mountain's coming down!" The ground shuddered violently. Stones crashed from above, and rivers of fire began to pour through the forest. The crew ran, stumbling toward the shore. Arya looked once more toward the sky, where the dragon had vanished, then followed. They reached the beach as the first rain began to fall. Black rain, thick with ash. The Nymeria's fang rocked in the waves, half buried in soot. They climbed aboard and pushed away from the shore, rowing until the island was nothing but a dark shape burning behind them. Only when the sea calmed did Arya speak. "It said fire lives in me," she murmured. "Do you believe that?" Rin looked at her wearily. "I believe it looked into your soul, girl. Whether that's blessing or curse, only the gods can tell." She turned her gaze westward. Beyond the haze, a faint light shimmered on the horizon. Not dawn, not fire, but something stranger, colder, calling to her like a whisper from the edge of the world. The dragon had not spoken its last. She could feel it, a tether of thought, thin as smoke, binding them across the dark sea. As night fell, Arya whispered to the wind, "You said the fire remembers. Then remember me." The sea gave no answer, but far away, in the storm-crowned mountain that still burned behind them, a single roar echoed once more across the water, vast, mournful, and unbroken, and Arya Stark knew the hunt was not yet done. The storm chased them for 2 nights and a day. The western sea turned black as ink, its waves rising like the backs of beasts beneath the moon. The Nymeria's fang groaned as if alive, its timbers bending with every heave of the tide. Lightning clawed the sky, and the rain came in sheets that stung the skin like glass. Arya did not hide below deck. She stood at the prow with her cloak plastered to her shoulders, the storm whipping around her like a living thing. Every flash of light painted the world in silver and shadow. The waves, the mast, the terrified faces of her crew. She did not fear the sea. She feared the silence that would come after, for in the silence she would hear the dragon again, that voice that spoke like fire through her bones. When dawn finally broke, it came weak and pale. The storm had spent itself, leaving the ship battered but afloat. Sails hung in tatters, and the deck was littered with splintered wood. 2 men had been washed overboard during the night. Rin said prayers for them in the old tongue, his voice hoarse. Arya stood beside him. They would have turned back if they could, he said. They feared this voyage from the start. They feared what they did not understand, Arya replied. And perhaps they were right to. She looked westward again. The sea was calm now, but the horizon burned faintly, a thin red shimmer, like embers under ash. By evening, they reached calmer waters. The air grew warmer, almost gentle, and the stars came out one by one. Arya sat upon the deck, sharpening needle, while Talia stitched a torn sail nearby. "You don't sleep," Talia said without looking up. "Not since the mountain burned." "I dream when I sleep," Arya answered. "Of the dragon?" Arya nodded. Talia spat into the sea. "If it speaks to you, maybe it's marked you. Maybe it's made you its own." Arya said nothing, but that night, as the ship drifted through still waters, the dream came again. She was standing on an endless plain of ash. The sky above her was red and black, filled with falling cinders. In the distance, she saw a city, its towers crumbling, its streets burning. She walked toward it and saw faces in the smoke: the Hound, Cersei, her mother, even Ned Stark. Each face turned to ash as she passed. Then came the dragon, vast and terrible, its wings blotting out the dying sun. But when it landed before her, its shape began to shift. The scales faded, the fire dimmed, and in its place stood a woman. She was tall, pale, her hair silver as moonlight. Her eyes were the same molten gold as the dragon's. "Daenerys Targaryen," Arya whispered. The woman smiled faintly. "You know my name." "I know what you did," Arya said. "You burned a city." Daenerys tilted her head. "And yet here you are, chasing fire across the sea." "I'm not you." "No," said the ghost of the Dragon Queen. "You are what comes after. You are the fire that learns to hide beneath the snow." The ground trembled. Flames rose from the earth, and Daenerys stepped back into them, her voice echoing as her form dissolved. "When the fire sleeps in the blood of wolves, the world is not yet done burning." Arya woke with a cry. The deck was empty, save for the lantern swinging above her, and the sea was dark all around. She pressed a hand to her chest, half expecting to feel heat beneath her skin, but her flesh was cold. At dawn, the horizon changed again. They saw land, a single dark shape rising from the sea, vast as a continent. Mountains like teeth pierced the clouds, and rivers of mist wound between them. Rin's eyes went wide. "That's no island," he whispered. "That's the world's edge." No one spoke as they approached. The shore was black rock, sharp and glittering, the sand gray as steel dust. Strange birds circled the cliffs, crying with voices that sounded almost human. When they made landfall, the air was heavy with the scent of iron and rain. The cliffs rose sheer above them, marked with veins of obsidian. Carvings had been etched into the rock, long winding shapes that looked like dragons twined together in endless battle. Talia touched one with her fingertips. "Old Valyria," she murmured. "It looks the same." "No," Arya said quietly. "Older." They climbed the cliffs, ropes biting into their hands, until they reached a plateau high above the sea. There, amid the black stone and creeping mist, they found ruins, vast and ancient, older than any castle of men. Pillars lay broken, and in the center of the ruins stood a circle of stones, carved with runes that shimmered faintly when touched. Rin crossed himself. This place is cursed. Cursed or forgotten, Arya said. Either way, it was built for something greater than men. A low sound rolled through the mist, not thunder, not wind. A heartbeat, slow, steady, deep beneath the earth. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The stones glowed brighter, the runes pulsing like veins of light. Arya drew needle. It's here, she said. The dragon rose from the chasm at the heart of the ruins, smoke trailing from its wings. It was even larger than before, its scales glowing from within, molten veins of red and gold. You came, it said, the voice thundering through her mind. You crossed the world for truth. Arya's throat was dry. Tell me what you want from me. To remember. The dragon lowered its head until its eyes filled her vision. All that is forgotten must be born again. Fire cannot die. It sleeps. The world will need it once more. Arya felt the air around her shimmer with heat. The runes flared, and the dragon's breath wrapped around her like smoke. I am the last flame, it said, and you, the spark that follows. Then its chest began to glow, a light so bright it seared the air. A fissure opened along its breast, revealing a heart like molten crystal. It pulsed once, twice, and a spark of fire flew from it, striking Arya square in the chest. She staggered, choking. For an instant, she felt as though she were burning alive. The heat consumed her, tearing through her lungs and veins until she fell to her knees, gasping. But the fire did not destroy her. It lived within her, coiling deep and fierce, waiting. When she looked up again, the dragon was gone. Only ash swirled where it had stood, glowing faintly in the wind. Rin and Talia rushed to her side, but Arya rose on her own. Her eyes gleamed, gray shot through with gold. It gave me something, she said quietly. Rin backed away. Gods, girl, what did it do to you? Arya looked toward the west, where the sea faded into mist and cloud. It remembered me, she said, and now I remember it. The Nymeria's fang left the black shore behind that evening. None of the crew spoke as the island vanished into fog, but Arya stood at the prow once more, her cloak stirring in the wind. The fire within her heart burned quietly, not with pain, but with purpose. And somewhere far away, beyond the reach of any man or map, a dragon's cry echoed through the clouds, not of fury, but of farewell. The hunt was ended, but the fire had only just begun. The western sea lay calm, eerily calm, as though the storm and the fire had never been. The Nymeria's fang drifted eastward now, its sails patched and gray, the crew silent and wary of their own captain. None spoke openly, but all had seen the light that flared within Arya Stark's chest upon the Black Isle. They had seen her eyes change, gray to gold, then back again, as if fire itself had looked through them. Days passed. The waves whispered like ghosts against the hull. No birds flew overhead, no wind stirred the water. The sea itself seemed to hold its breath. At night, Arya dreamed of fire and snow entwined. She saw Winterfell burning beneath a red sky, and above it flew a shadow that was neither dragon nor wolf, but both, vast, silver-winged, and crowned with frost. She heard the voice again, the dragon's voice, soft and patient as flame-licking wood. The fire sleeps, but it remembers. She woke shivering, though sweat clung to her skin. When she looked out across the deck, she found Rin watching her from the wheel. "Storm's over," he said quietly, as though fearing to break the stillness. "But the sea's wrong. There's no tide, no wind. We're adrift." Arya joined him. The horizon was flat and colorless, neither dawn nor dusk. "We've gone too far," she said. "Even the world forgets this place." Talia climbed from below deck, a dagger at her belt. Her face was drawn, her eyes hollow. "The men whisper, Arya. They say you carry the dragon's curse, that you brought the fire into our ship." Arya's voice was steady. "Would you rather I'd left it behind?" Talia hesitated. "Aye," she said at last. "I would." Arya turned away, but her hand brushed against the hilt of needle. She did not draw it. She had killed too many for smaller reasons in the past, and there was no honor in silencing fear. "Let them speak," she said softly. "Fear is safer than blind courage." Yet even she could feel the strangeness that hung over the ship. The air shimmered faintly around her, as though heat clung to her skin. When she stood near metal, it warmed to the touch. Once, she caught Rin staring as a spark flickered from her fingertips to the rail, a brief golden arc that vanished as quickly as it came. She began to wear gloves. That night, she took her meal alone in her cabin, staring at the mapless expanse beyond the window. Somewhere beyond the horizon lay Westeros, the cold, hard land of her birth, where wolves howled in the snows of the north and kings fought over ashes. Once, she had thought never to return. Now she wondered if she even could. Would Winterfell still know her, if she came back carrying dragonfire in her veins? She was still pondering when she heard footsteps above deck, hurried, heavy. A shout followed, then another. Arya rose at once and drew needle. When she burst onto the deck, chaos reigned. The crew had gathered near the mast, torches flaring in the windless dark. Rin stood between Arya and the others, his sword drawn. "What is this?" she demanded. Talia stepped forward, her eyes bright with fury and fear. "We're done following your madness," she said. "You've brought death to us once already. You talk with dragons. You glow like a witch in your sleep. And now the sea itself won't move. You've cursed us, Stark." The men muttered in agreement. Arya's voice was low. "You think I brought this? The dragon chose me, yes, but I did not ask for it. If we turn against each other, the sea will finish what the fire began." Rin's gaze flickered between them. "Talia," he said, "put down your blade. You know her. She's no sorceress." "Isn't she?" Talia hissed. "Look at her hands. Look at her eyes." Arya looked down. Her gloves had blackened at the fingertips, faint trails of smoke curling from the seams. She hadn't even noticed the heat. Something inside her stirred. Not anger, not fear, but something deeper. The same thing that had whispered to her in the dragon's voice. "The fire sleeps, but it remembers." "Enough," she said. Her tone carried weight that silenced the deck. "You want to be rid of me? Then take the boat, sail east, but I'll not beg forgiveness for what I've become." Talia hesitated. The firelight flickered across Arya's face, a face neither wholly human nor wholly other. At last, the smuggler spat into the sea. "You'll damn us all," she said. "And when you do, I hope your gods are watching." She turned and vanished below deck. Within the hour, one of the ship's smaller boats was lowered into the still water. Talia and two others climbed aboard, their oars vanishing into the gray distance. The sea swallowed them without a sound. When dawn came, they were gone. For a time, the silence felt heavier than before. Then, one by one, the remaining crew began to move again, tending ropes, repairing sails, pretending life had returned to order. But no one met Arya's gaze. That evening, a wind rose at last. It came from the west, strange and cold, smelling faintly of smoke and salt. The sails filled, and the ship began to move once more. Rin joined her at the prow. "Seems the sea forgives you, at least," he said quietly. Arya's eyes were distant. "No," she said, "not the sea." As night fell, she saw it again, far behind them through the thinning mist. A glow beneath the waves, faint but growing, spreading like veins of fire across the deep. It followed them, keeping pace, too far to be ship or storm. "Rin," she whispered, "do you see it?" He turned and froze. 7 above. The glow rose higher. For an instant, Arya saw shapes within it, wings of light, shadows twisting, sparks bursting like stars. The sea boiled. Then the glow faded, swallowed once more by the deep. The wind died. Only then did Arya realize her hands were burning again. She opened her palm, and in it flickered a small flame, golden and silent, hovering above her skin. It did not hurt. It pulsed with her heartbeat, alive, waiting. Rin stared in awe. "You carry its fire." Arya closed her fist. The flame vanished. "I carry its memory." He looked out toward the sea, then back to her. Then what happens when memory wakes? Arya's eyes turned toward the east, where the faintest glimmer of dawn touched the sky. "Then," she said softly, "the world will remember too." The wind stirred once more, gentle as a sigh, and the Nymeria's Fang sailed on, a lonely ship between shadow and sunrise, its captain watching the horizon with eyes that held both winter and flame. By the time the sun set again, the Nymeria's Fang had left behind the still waters and entered seas that breathed once more. The tide rose and fell, the wind shifted with purpose, and gulls followed in pale arcs above the mast. But even as the sea returned to life, a different stillness had taken hold among the crew. They no longer spoke to Arya except in short, careful words. She felt their eyes on her, sharp as daggers, whenever her shadow crossed the deck. She did not blame them. Fire had touched her, and men feared what burned without consuming. For 3 days they sailed east, following the course of stars. Arya steered by memory, by what she had once been taught in Bravos, and what she had learned from Rin's old maps. But now she began to sense direction differently. The stars hummed faintly when she looked upon them too long, as if they whispered secrets in the old tongue of the world. When she closed her eyes, she could feel the pull of something far away, familiar and cold. It was Westeros calling her home. On the 4th night, the moon rose white and full. The sea was calm as glass, and the world shimmered under its light. Arya stood alone at the prow, needle at her hip, her face upturned to the wind. The flame that had lived inside her since the Black Island had not dimmed. It pulsed sometimes when she breathed, quiet but certain, as if it belonged there. She thought often of Jon. If he yet lived beyond the wall, what would he say to her now? Would he see the same fire in her that once burned in the blood of Targaryens? Or would he turn away, calling her stranger and cursed? She tried to picture Winterfell, the towers, the godswood, the snow that never truly melted. It felt half dream, half memory. The place she had loved as a child now seemed so small in her mind, no larger than a candle's glow beside the vastness she had seen. Yet she yearned for it still. Near midnight, she heard footsteps behind her. Rin approached, leaning heavy on the rail. The salt wind had carved deep lines in his face. "You'll drive yourself mad, staring at the stars like that," he said. "Perhaps I already am." He gave a rough laugh. "I've sailed with madmen before. None looked as calm as you do." Arya turned to him, her eyes catching the moonlight. "I don't feel calm. I feel awake." Rin studied her, then nodded toward the east. "If the winds hold, we'll see Westeros within a fortnight. The men will be glad to step on soil that isn't cursed." Arya said nothing. She thought of the dragon's words. Fire sleeps in the blood of wolves. She could not yet tell whether it had spoken promise or doom. The following morning, the lookout called down from the mast. "Land! To the northeast!" A cry went up. The men rushed to the rail. Through the spyglass, Arya saw a dark line rising from the horizon, a shore cloaked in mist. Not Westeros, but closer than they had been in many moons. As the Nymeria's fang drew near, the mist thinned to reveal a coastline of broken stone and gray cliffs. The beach below was scattered with the bones of ships, old wrecks half buried in sand, their masts reaching toward the sky like the fingers of drowned men. "This is no safe harbor," said Rin grimly. "Yet it's where the sea has brought us," Arya replied. They dropped anchor in a shallow cove and went ashore. The beach was silent save for the cry of distant gulls. Arya knelt beside a wreck and brushed sand from the hull. Beneath the rot and salt, she could still read the carved letters, Merax's wing. She frowned. "That's Valyrian." Rin nodded. The old empire sent ships west once, before the Doom. They vanished. Some said the sea devoured them, others that they found land and never returned. Arya rose. They found this place. They followed the path that wound inland through stony hills. The earth here was dark, almost black, and the air smelled faintly of sulfur. Soon they came upon ruins, low walls of obsidian, melted and fused as if burned by a fire so fierce it turned stone to glass. Talia, who had not spoken since her mutiny, muttered a prayer under her breath. Then they heard it, a low hum rising from the ground itself. The air shimmered, the earth trembling faintly beneath their feet. "What is that?" Rin asked. Arya knelt, pressing her palm to the soil. It was warm. The hum grew stronger, echoing within her chest. The fire in her blood pulsed in answer, as if recognizing the sound. "It's calling," she whispered. They reached the top of a ridge, and there they saw it, a great valley split open like a wound, its depths glowing faintly red. Rivers of molten stone wound through the darkness, and in the center stood something vast and impossible, a black shape half buried in the earth, curved and broken. A skull, the skull of a dragon. It was larger than any Arya had ever imagined. Its jaws could have swallowed a castle gate whole. Great horns curled from its brow, and within its hollow sockets flickered faint embers of light. The crew fell silent. Rin crossed himself. "Seven, save us. Is that what lies waiting in the world's end?" Arya took a step forward. Her pulse matched the hum that filled the air. The skull's fire brightened as she approached, its glow reflected in her eyes. And then, faintly, a whisper came. "Child of fire." Her breath caught. "You carry what was mine. You carry what will be again." She fell to her knees. The voice was the dragon's, yet not the same as before. This one was older, deeper, vast as the sea. Rin rushed to her side. "Arya, what is it?" She could barely speak. "It's not dead." A tremor passed through the ground, so strong the cliffs above them crumbled. The skull shuddered. From the cracks in its bones poured red light like liquid flame. The crew fled, shouting. Rin tried to pull her away, but Arya did not move. The light flowed toward her, spiraling through the air like ribbons of molten gold. It touched her chest, sank into her skin, and the hum grew deafening. The world vanished in a roar of heat and light. When the fire cleared, she stood alone upon the ridge. The valley was silent once more, the skull dim and cold. Rin and the others were nowhere to be seen. Smoke drifted from Arya's hands, but she was unburned. In her palm lay a shard of crystal, small and pulsing faintly with inner flame. She closed her fist around it, and the hum faded. The fire within her stilled. She did not know whether she had been chosen or cursed, but she knew this: the dragons were not gone. Their memory lived not only in her veins, but in the bones of the earth itself, waiting to rise again. As she turned back toward the distant shore, the wind caught her hair, and far above, a single star flared red against the pale sky, a herald of something stirring beyond the known world. The fire remembers, and now, so did she. When Arya opened her eyes again, the valley lay silent and cold. Its molten rivers hardened to dull black stone. The air smelled of ash and ancient fire. The skull's light had died, leaving only the echo of its power humming faintly beneath the earth like a heartbeat fading into sleep. She rose slowly, her limbs trembling, her cloak stiff with soot. The shard she had taken burned faintly in her palm, warm as living flesh. It pulsed to her heartbeat, each glow a whisper of something vast beneath the surface of her thoughts, something that knew her name. She tucked it beneath her tunic, close to her skin. Of the crew there was no sign. The path that had brought them to the valley had crumbled. Cliffs had fallen, burying half the route in dust and broken stone. The sea was somewhere beyond the ridges, but the horizon swam in haze. She began to walk. The road wound upward, narrow and jagged, and each step echoed through the emptiness. Her shadow followed, sharp and long beneath the pale sun. The silence pressed close around her, heavy as stone. By dusk, she reached the ridge again and saw the sea stretched far below, dark, endless, and cruelly calm. The Nymearia's Fang still lay at anchor in the cove, though the sails hung limp and no smoke rose from the galley. She descended toward it, her legs aching, her throat raw from dust. As she neared the beach, movement flickered among the wrecks. Figures, faint at first, then clearer. The crew. Rin stood at their head, his clothes torn, his face blackened with ash. Talia knelt beside a small fire, staring into it with hollow eyes. When Arya appeared, all of them rose, wary, fearful, yet unwilling to speak. Rin was first to find his voice. "The mountain split in two after you fell," he said. "The fire chased us to the shore. We thought you were dead." Arya met his gaze. "I was close enough." Talia's voice was hoarse. "What did you find there? What did you wake?" Arya looked to the sea before answering. "A memory. Older than dragons, older than men. It sleeps still, but not forever." The wind stirred then, a soft, strange wind that carried warmth even in the gathering night. The crew shifted uneasily. "We should leave this cursed coast," said Rin. "Whatever you found, girl, it's not meant for us." Arya nodded. "Aye. We leave with the tide." They worked in silence, preparing the ship. When darkness fell, Arya stood once more at the prow. The shard beneath her tunic throbbed gently against her chest, its rhythm matching the sway of the waves. As the ship drifted from the cove, she looked back. The cliffs glowed faintly under the moon, the black skull visible even at a distance. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw light stir again within its hollow eyes. But then the fog rolled in, and the island was gone. Days passed. The sea turned cold again, the air sharper. They sailed east by the stars, though Arya had stopped trusting the sky. Her sleep was fitful, filled with dreams of fire buried beneath snow, of wolves running through burning forests, of dragons rising from rivers of ice. Each time she woke, she found the shard warm against her skin, glowing faintly in the dark. On the fifth night, a storm came from the north. It struck without warning. Wind howling, rain like knives, waves smashing against the hull. The Nymearia's Fang fought to keep afloat, its masts groaning like wounded beasts. Arya took the wheel. The storm was worse than any she had seen before, a wall of black wind and lightning. The men shouted prayers to every god they knew, but their voices were lost in the roar. A bolt struck the mast. Fire ran down the rigging like serpents of light. For an instant, Arya thought she saw wings above the storm, vast, shadowed wings, and the faintest echo of a roar. Then the sea rose, and the ship plunged into darkness. She did not remember the fall. When she woke, the world was still. The sun had returned, and the sea was calm again. She lay on a narrow stretch of sand, the wreck of the Nymearia's Fang half submerged nearby. Debris floated in the shallows, broken planks, coils of rope, the body of a sailor turning slowly in the tide. She rose unsteadily, her head pounding. The shard was still with her, still warm. It had not left her side even as the ship sank. There was no sign of Rin, or Talia, or any of the others. She stood for a long while, listening to the whisper of the surf. The shore was strange. Black sand streaked with silver veins, cliffs rising behind her like walls. Beyond them, faint smoke curled into the sky. Arya followed it. The path wound upward through rocky gullies until she reached a plateau where the land flattened into fields of gray grass. In the distance stood the ruins of a watchtower, long fallen, its stones overgrown with pale vines. At its base burned a small fire. A man sat beside it, his back to her, his cloak tattered and stained with salt. When Arya drew near, he turned. He was lean, his hair the color of frost, his beard short and dark. A sword lay across his knees, its steel dull with age. "You're far from home, girl," he said, his voice rough, "and from your ship." "So are you," Arya replied. He smiled faintly. "Mine sank a lifetime ago." She studied him. There was something strange about him, something that felt older than his face. His eyes were pale gray, almost white, and when he looked at her, she felt as though he saw more than her flesh. "What is this place?" she asked. He stirred the fire with a stick. "The last shore before the world falls away. All things that are lost drift here eventually. Ships, men, memories." Arya's hand drifted to her tunic, where the shard pulsed faintly. The man's gaze followed the motion, and he nodded once. "So," he said softly, "you found one of the hearts." She froze. "You know of it?" "I've seen its kind before," he said. "Long ago, when dragons still ruled the skies and men thought themselves gods. Those shards were their anchors, pieces of their fire bound into stone. You've bound one to yourself now. You'll carry it until it remembers what it was. What happens then?" He looked up at the darkening sky. "Then the world changes again." The wind shifted, scattering the fire's embers. Arya felt the shard grow warmer, as if it had heard his words. "Who are you?" she asked. The man smiled faintly. "A ghost of what once was, and perhaps of what's to come." He rose, slinging his sword across his back. "You'll find no rest here, Arya Stark. The fire has marked you. You can no longer run from it, nor can you return home unchanged." He turned toward the cliffs. "Follow the smoke east, and you'll find what waits for you. The dragon's memory does not end in the west." Before she could speak, he was gone, vanished into the mist that rolled across the plateau. Arya stood alone beside the dying fire, the sea whispering far below. She looked to the east. Beyond the haze, the horizon glimmered faintly, as if something vast stirred beneath the light. The fire within her heart flared once, bright and steady, and Arya Stark began to walk again. Part X. The morning that followed was gray and cold, the kind of dawn that felt older than the sun itself. Arya woke on the plateau beside the dying fire. The mist clung low to the ground, curling around her boots as she rose. The stranger's words lingered in her mind. Follow the smoke east. She looked to the horizon and saw it. A thin column of gray drifting above the distant hills, steady and pale. No sea breeze stirred, yet the smoke moved, as if guiding her. The shard at her breast pulsed faintly, its warmth spreading through her chest like a heartbeat that was not her own. The path eastward was long and rough. She walked until the mist thinned, until the cliffs gave way to rolling slopes of black stone and sparse grass. Ravens followed her from afar, their cries echoing over the empty land. The silence between their calls was deep enough to hear the rhythm of her own pulse. By midday, she found signs of life, or what was left of it. Half buried in the soil lay fragments of glassy armor, fused and warped by fire. Bones, human and otherwise, jutted from the ground. Arya knelt beside one, brushing away the ash. It had once been a skull, yet long and narrow, with teeth like daggers. A dragonling, perhaps. One of those that had perished when Valyria fell. But how far had its fire reached? How many centuries had it taken for even the bones to drift here, to this far edge of the world? The smoke grew thicker as she climbed higher, its scent bitter, mixed with salt and something older, sulfur perhaps, or the memory of burning earth. The ground trembled faintly beneath her boots. She began to see cracks in the stone, narrow fissures glowing faintly with red light, as if the fire beneath the world had begun to stir. When she reached the ridge, she saw it, another valley below, wide and dark, its heart a pit of steam. But in the center stood no skull this time, no ruin, only a lake. It shimmered faintly, molten at the edges, its surface reflecting the pale light of the sun like glass. And upon that mirror-like water, a shape moved. It was small at first, like a ripple breaking the calm. But as Arya watched, it grew, stretching, unfolding wings of black and silver. A dragon, yes, but not of flesh and bone. Its body was woven of smoke and light, translucent, its eyes twin stars that burned with cold fire. It turned its head toward her. For a long moment, neither moved. The creature's gaze was deep and endless, like the sea before a storm. Then, slowly, it lowered its wings and bowed its head. The shard beneath Arya's tunic flared with light. She felt its heat spread through her limbs, and the air shimmered around her. The dragon lifted its head again, and when it spoke, the words were not sound, but thought, carried on the breath of the world itself. "You came, little wolf." Arya's breath caught. "What are you? What remains of what was? Fire given shape, the dream of dragons still burning in the bones of the earth. Are you the same one I saw before? No, that one was born of flame. I am the shadow it left behind." She took a step closer to the lake's edge. The surface rippled, but no reflection met her gaze, only endless light. "Why do you call me here?" The dragon's wings shifted, stirring the air, because the fire you carry must not fade. It was given to you so the world might remember. Yet memory is a cruel thing, Arya Stark. It can burn as easily as it can warm. She touched the shard beneath her tunic. Its glow pulsed with the same rhythm as the dragon's eyes. It told me the same, that the fire remembers. Then you know what follows. The fire that remembers also returns. A tremor shook the ground. The lake shivered and steam rose higher into the sky. Arya looked around, the fissures widening, the air growing heavy with heat. "What happens now?" she asked. The dragon's eyes gleamed. "Now you choose. To bear it or to break it? I don't understand. You will. With a sound like a sigh, the dragon began to fade, its form dissolving into smoke. But as it vanished, the lake's surface changed. The reflection of the sun dimmed, and in its place, she saw something else. Shadows of cities burning, walls crumbling under wings of flame, and men crying out beneath a sky of fire. She saw the Iron Throne melting like wax. She saw Daenerys standing amid the ruins, her eyes bright with madness, and beyond her, Jon Snow's face, pale as death, his sword red with blood. The vision struck like a blade to the heart. "No," she whispered. "That's gone. It's done." "The world forgets," came the dragon's fading voice, "but fire remembers, and it always hungers." The reflection vanished. The lake went still. Arya stood trembling at its edge, her breath sharp in the cooling air. Her hands glowed faintly beneath the skin, light coiling through her veins like molten silver. She pressed them to the earth, and steam hissed where she touched it. The fire within her had grown. It no longer slept. When the sun set, she turned east once more. Behind her, the lake began to bubble again, faintly at first, then stronger. Red light rose from its depths, staining the clouds above. Something had awakened there, something that would not rest again. She walked through the night, guided by the stars and the pulse of the shard. Her steps were tireless, her breath steady. The fire no longer burned her. It was part of her now, a silent companion whispering at the edges of thought. By dawn, she reached the crest of another hill, and there, beyond the endless mist and sea, she saw it at last, a coastline, green and sharp, breaking through the horizon, the cliffs of Westeros. Her heart tightened. For the first time in many moons, she saw gulls wheeling above the shore, and she knew them not as omens, but as memories. She had come home, though the woman who had left was not the one returning. As she descended toward the sea, the shard flared once more, brighter than before. She looked down and saw flame reflected in her eyes. Winterfell awaited somewhere beyond those hills, cold and ancient, where snow still fell upon the heart trees and wolves still howled beneath the stars. But Arya Stark carried the fire of dragons now, and when winter met flame again, the world would change once more. The fire remembered, and soon so would the North. When Arya Stark's boots struck Westerosi soil once more, the sea winds that met her smelled of salt and pine and snow. The cliffs were jagged, the beaches strewn with white stones, and the cry of gulls echoed high above. She stood long upon the shore, the cold air biting her face, her hair whipping loose behind her. After so many months beneath strange stars, this land felt both foreign and achingly familiar. The Nymeria's Fang was gone. What had remained of her ship had broken upon the rocks in the night, splintered by the same storm that had carried her to shore. She did not look for the others. The sea had claimed them, as it always did, without mercy or promise. She was alone again, as she had been in Braavos, as she had been since Winterfell first fell to ruin. But she carried something now that none before her had borne. A living fire. When she touched her breast, she felt its warmth through the leather. The shard had fused into her skin, leaving a faint mark shaped like a crescent flame. She could feel it sometimes, pulsing faintly in rhythm with her heart, whispering of dragons and forgotten skies. She turned inland. The cliffs gave way to high moors and rolling hills, where heather bent under the wind. The path she took was no road at all, but a hunter's trail, half hidden beneath frost. Her steps were steady, though she did not yet know where they led. Only one word pulsed in her mind: home. By dusk, she reached the edge of a forest. Pines stretched tall and dark, their branches dusted with snow. Beneath their boughs, the ground was soft and silent, muffling her footsteps. She walked until the moon rose pale and cold, and then she saw firelight ahead. A camp, small and rough. 3 men sat near the flames, cloaked in furs. A horse grazed nearby, its reins tied to a fallen branch. Arya stepped from the trees without sound, and only when she was near did the youngest of them see her. He sprang up, hand on his sword. "Who goes there?" "A traveler," Arya said. The man squinted through the firelight. "You travel alone? At night? In this country, that's foolish." "Foolish, perhaps," she said, "but alive." Her voice carried something that made the men still. She moved into the circle of firelight, her cloak ragged, her boots worn, yet there was a steadiness in her that was not of any wanderer they had ever seen. One of the older men rose slowly. His beard was gray, his eyes sharp. "You've the look of the north about you," he said. "From where do you come?" "Farther than you'd believe," Arya answered. The man studied her a moment longer, then nodded toward the fire. "Sit then. Share our heat. There's stew enough for one more." She took the offered bowl and sat. The meat was thin, the broth salty, but she ate without complaint. After a time, the gray-bearded man spoke again. "You've no name for us?" Arya met his gaze. "Names are dangerous things." He smiled faintly. "Aye, that they are. But even the dangerous ones have to sleep." "I'm Arya," she said at last. "Arya Stark." The name struck them like a gust of wind. One of the younger men muttered a curse, crossing himself. The older one leaned forward. "Stark, you say? Of Winterfell?" "Yes." He studied her with a wary respect. "We heard tell of you once. The she-wolf who crossed the sea. Some said you'd gone to the ends of the world." "I did," Arya said softly. "And what did you find there?" She looked into the fire. "Dragons." The men exchanged uneasy glances. One laughed uncertainly. "There've been no dragons since the Queen's beasts died in King's Landing." Arya said nothing. The fire crackled, and for a moment, its light deepened to gold, the color of molten metal. The men fell silent again. When she rose to leave, the gray-bearded one stood with her. "Winterfell's north of here, though it's a hard road through the mountains. The snows have come early. You'll need shelter." "I'll find it," she said. He hesitated, then drew something from his pouch, a small wooden carving shaped like a direwolf. "Take this then. It's not much, but perhaps the gods will know you by it." Arya accepted it with a nod. "Thank you." As she turned away, the youngest man whispered, "Gods help her, if she truly means to go there alone." Arya did not look back. For 3 days she traveled north. The air grew colder, the wind crueler. Frost clung to her lashes each morning, and her breath came in clouds. Yet the flame inside her did not dim. When she grew weary, it seemed to lend her strength. When the cold bit deep, its warmth stirred beneath her ribs. On the 4th night, snow began to fall. Thick flakes drifted through the air, settling in her hair and cloak. She walked until she could walk no more, then found shelter in the hollow of an old tree. As she drifted into uneasy sleep, she dreamed she stood again on the Black Island, the dragon's voice rumbling like distant thunder. "Child of winter," it said, "you bring fire to the land of ice." "Why me?" she asked. "Because you are both, ice and flame, the blood of wolves, the spark of dragons. You carry what the world has forgotten." The vision shifted. She saw Winterfell, its walls gleaming white beneath the snow. but smoke rose from its towers, and shadows moved within. Wolves howled, not in hunger, but in warning. She woke at dawn, heart pounding. The snow had stopped. In the distance, faint through the gray light, she saw the outline of towers, the walls of Winterfell. It took her until sunset to reach the outer fields. The gates stood open, guarded by men in heavy cloaks. They stared as she approached, this lone figure walking through the snow, her face half hidden beneath her hood. When she reached them, one called out, "Who goes there?" "A Stark," she said simply. The men exchanged looks. Then one stepped forward, lowering his spear. "My lady?" Arya drew back her hood. Her hair was streaked with ash and silver now, her eyes strange, gray, but glimmering faintly gold when the light struck them. The guard's breath caught. "By the gods, Arya Stark." Word spread quickly. She crossed the courtyard to the great hall, her boots leaving melted prints where she walked. Snow hissed as it touched her cloak. Inside, the air was warm with firelight and murmured voices. A man stood near the hearth, tall and broad-shouldered, a cloak of gray fur upon his shoulders. His hair was black as a raven's wing, his eyes deep and weary as winter itself. Jon Snow turned. For a long moment, they only stared. Then Arya said quietly, "You're still alive." Jon's voice was soft, rough with disbelief. "So are you." They crossed the space between them, and he pulled her into an embrace. For the first time in years, she felt the beat of another heart that matched her own. But even as they held each other, Arya felt the warmth inside her surge. The fire stirred, responding to something unseen. She saw it reflected in Jon's eyes, the faint, golden light that now lived beneath her skin. He stepped back slowly. "What happened to you, Arya?" She looked toward the flames in the hearth. They bent as if drawn to her, burning higher, brighter. "I went west," she said, "and I found what the world forgot." Jon's gaze hardened. "You brought it back." "Yes," Arya whispered. "The fire remembers." Outside, the wind howled over the walls of Winterfell, and far above, hidden by clouds, a single distant cry echoed through the northern sky, a sound half wolf, half dragon. Winter had met fire, and nothing would ever be the same again. Winterfell lay shrouded in mist, its gray walls half lost in drifting snow. Smoke rose from its chimneys, steady and dark, and the howling of wolves echoed from the godswood. The air smelled of pine, iron, and frost. Arya had forgotten how heavy the northern cold could be. Yet now, the chill did not bite her as it once had. The warmth inside her, the dragon fire that pulsed within her veins, was a quiet flame that the cold could not touch. She followed Jon through the halls she had once known as a girl. Every stone, every archway whispered memories, the echoes of childish laughter, of swords clashing in the yard, of her father's steady voice. But the Winterfell of her memory and the one that stood before her now were not the same. It was smaller somehow, older. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence heavier. Jon spoke little as they walked. The years had carved hard lines into his face, though his eyes were still the same, steady, sorrowful, and kind. He had the look of a man who carried ghosts on his shoulders. When they reached the great hall, the fire burned high in the hearth. Furs were laid upon the tables, and the banners of the direwolf hung upon the walls. Jon motioned for her to sit. "You shouldn't have come back," he said at last, his voice low. Arya's gaze did not waver. "I was born here. My blood's in these stones." Jon looked at her, then at the flames. "You're not the same as you were. I can see it in your eyes. What did you bring back with you, Arya?" She hesitated. "Fire." "Fire?" His tone hardened. We've had enough fire in this world. It burned kingdoms to ash. This fire is different, she said. It's not rage, it's memory. He studied her in silence. The firelight flickered across his face, gilding the shadows beneath his eyes. You talk like her, he said softly. Who? Daenerys. Arya flinched, the name striking deep. I'm not her. No, Jon said, but I saw what fire does to good hearts. I saw it take everything. He rose and paced before the hearth. When I killed her, I thought it ended there. I thought I'd buried the dragon forever. Arya's voice was quiet, but unyielding. You didn't bury it, Jon. You just hid it. It was never meant to die. He turned sharply. You're wrong. She met his gaze. Am I? The fire behind them crackled. Sparks rose into the air, dancing in the dim light. Arya watched them, remembering the Black Island, the dragon's golden eyes, the words it had spoken. The fire that remembers also returns. Jon's shoulders sagged. The North has peace now. We've no need for kings or dragons or heroes. The people only want quiet. Quiet never lasts, Arya said. The world doesn't stop because we wish it to. He said nothing. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the shutters. For a moment, Arya thought she heard something within the storm. A distant cry, low and mournful, like thunder shaped into a roar. Jon looked up sharply. Did you hear that? Aye, she said. It's not the wind. They went to the courtyard. The night was clear, the moon full above the snows. Soldiers had gathered near the walls, torches burning bright against the dark. One pointed toward the sky. Look! Arya followed his hand. Far above the clouds, a flicker of red light moved across the heavens, swift and silent. It was gone in an instant, but the air remained charged, the torches flaring brighter, as if drawn by unseen breath. Jon's hand fell to the hilt of his sword. No, he whispered. It can't be. Arya's heart pounded. She felt the shard beneath her skin grow warm. The mark at her breast glowed faintly, and when she breathed, the air misted gold. It's waking, she said. Jon turned to her, voice fierce. If you brought this here, if it followed you, it didn't follow me, she said. It called to me, and now it calls to you. Why? Because the North is not dead, Arya said. It never was. The fire beneath the world stirs again, and it knows us. Jon stepped closer, anger flashing in his eyes. You think this is destiny? You think this... He reached toward her chest, where the light pulsed through her tunic. This curse is something we should embrace? It's not a curse, Arya said. It's truth. Fire and ice. The world was built from both, and it's breaking because it's forgotten them. He stared at her, breathing hard. Then he turned away, pressing his hands to his face. I killed a queen to stop the burning, Arya. I can't watch it start again. Arya's voice softened. You won't have to. When he looked back, there was sorrow in her eyes. I didn't bring fire to destroy Jon. I brought it to remember. It sleeps in me now, but it will not stay asleep forever. Jon opened his mouth to speak, but the ground trembled beneath them. The torches swayed, their flames bowing toward the sky. The soldiers cried out, clutching their spears. From the forests beyond the walls, a column of smoke rose, thin at first, then spreading like wings. The air grew hot, the snow melting in rivulets along the stones. Arya's pulse quickened. It's here. Jon's hand tightened on his sword. The gods save us all. The sky split open with a roar. Fire poured from the clouds, blazing white and gold. The wind struck them, searing and cold at once, and the cry that followed was vast enough to shake the world. For an instant, Arya saw it, huge and dark, scales gleaming like molten iron, wings that stretched from horizon to horizon. A dragon, reborn from memory, descending upon the north. The soldiers scattered, shouting prayers. Jon stood frozen, his cloak whipping in the wind. Arya stepped forward, her hair streaming, her eyes lit with the same fire that burned above. She felt no fear. The dragon's gaze met hers through the storm, and in its golden eyes she saw recognition. Jon called her name, but his voice was lost in the roar. The creature circled once above Winterfell, its wings stirring the snow into spirals of ash and flame. Then, with a single beat, it vanished into the clouds, leaving the night burning in its wake. Silence fell. The snow had melted from the courtyard stones, steam rising from the walls. Arya turned to Jon. "It remembers us," she said. He stared at her, his face pale, his breath ghosting in the golden air. "And what does it want?" Her answer came as softly as the falling ash. "To finish what we began." In the distance, thunder rolled again, but it was not thunder. The night trembled with the sound of wings. The fire had returned to the land of ice, and the wolf who carried its heart stood at the edge of the world once more. Snow fell in quiet sheets over Winterfell, muffling the cries that had once echoed through its courtyards. The storm had passed, but the air was thick with the scent of ash and something older, fire that should not exist in winter's heart. Jon Snow stood upon the battlements, his hand resting on the cold stone as he watched the horizon burn faintly red beyond the white hills. The light there pulsed like the beating of some vast, unseen heart. He had not slept. None in Winterfell had. Since the dragon's return, every soul within the walls had felt its shadow upon their minds, a presence that breathed in time with the wind. The livestock refused to eat, the ravens would not fly, and the hounds in the kennels whined without end. Arya had not spoken since that night. He found her in the godswood, beneath the ancient heart tree. The face carved in its white trunk wept red sap that gleamed in the pale morning light. She stood before it, her cloak dusted with snow, her hair loose about her shoulders. Her breath rose in small clouds, though her skin showed no sign of cold. Jon approached quietly, though she had already heard him. "It's watching us," she said, her voice low. He followed her gaze upward. "The dragon?" "The fire," she said. "It isn't just a beast, Jon. It's something older, something that's been sleeping since before the first men built their walls." He frowned. "You sound like old Nan's tales." Perhaps her tales were truths no one wanted to remember. She turned toward him then, and the look in her eyes made him pause. They glowed faintly, not with madness, but with purpose, like embers beneath frost. "When I was west of the seas, I felt it calling from beneath the earth. It wasn't rage or hunger. It was memory. The fire wants to wake." Jon shook his head. "And when it wakes, it burns. That's what it does." She stepped closer. "Not all fires destroy. Some forge." He stared at her for a long time, torn between fear and the fierce love that had survived every war, every loss. "And what would you forge, little sister? Another world of ash?" "No," she whispered. "A world that remembers what it was meant to be." They stood in silence, the heart tree creaking softly in the wind. The snow fell heavier now, each flake hissing when it touched her shoulders, melting before it could settle. Jon reached for her hand. It was warm, too warm. "Whatever this is inside you, Arya, it isn't natural. You must let it go." "I can't," she said. "It's bound to me. The dragon chose me. The fire chose me. And what if it's lying?" His voice broke, rough with dread, What if it's only using you? She met his gaze steadily. Then I'll master it before it masters me. He wanted to argue, to command her as he once might have when they were children. But the woman before him was no child, and the light within her made him feel small, mortal. You sound like her, he said finally, like Daenerys when she spoke of destiny. I'm not her. Arya's tone was sharp now, though not unkind. She was the fire alone. I am both, fire and frost. The wolf's blood tempers the flame. Jon looked away, his breath misting in the cold. I hope you're right. She turned back to the heart tree, her fingers brushing the carved face. There's something coming, Jon. The dragon didn't fly north by chance. It's drawn to the wall, to what lies beyond it. He felt the old fear stir in his gut. The wall is broken. The dead are gone. Are they? Arya murmured. Some things don't die. They only change their shape. Before he could answer, a horn sounded from the ramparts. 3 long blasts that had not been heard in the north for generations. Jon's blood ran cold. He and Arya ran to the gates. The guards stood pale and trembling, pointing toward the fields. The snow there moved like water, rippling beneath an unseen force. Shapes rose from it, tall, pale, silent. Not many, but enough. The dead, one guard whispered. The dead walk again. Jon's hand went to Longclaw. The fire must have woken them. No, Arya said. It's calling to them. Fire and death are bound together. She stepped forward. The warmth in her chest flared, casting faint gold upon the snow. The whites hesitated, their pale eyes flickering as if unsure. She raised her hand, and the air between them shimmered. Jon watched, breathless, as the snow hissed and melted around her feet. The nearest white stopped, its body trembling. Then, slowly, impossibly, it knelt. The others followed. One by one, the dead bent their knees, bowing their frozen heads toward her. "What are you doing?" Jon asked, his voice rough with awe and fear. "I don't know," she said, "but they know me." The fire dimmed. The dead collapsed, lifeless once more, smoke rising faintly from their remains. Arya swayed, pale and shaking. Jon caught her before she fell. "It's too strong," she murmured. "It's waking things I can't control." He held her close. "Then you'll have to stop it, Arya, before it burns everything again." She met his eyes, her own shimmering like molten steel. "No, Jon, I can't stop it. I have to guide it. If I don't, it will find another." That night, they gathered in the hall with the lords of the north. Word had already spread of what had happened at the gates. The men looked at Arya with a mix of reverence and dread. Some called her blessed, others cursed. Jon stood beside her, silent. "The fire's no myth," she told them. "The dragon that crossed the sea was not the last. Its spirit burned still beneath the world, and now it stirs. If we stand idle, it will consume us all." "And what would you have us do?" asked Lord Glover. "Pray to it? Bow to it like the Mad Queen?" Arya's voice was calm. "No, we face it. We understand it. The fire remembers the north. It remembers the wolves. It's calling us for a reason." Murmurs filled the hall. Jon raised his hand for silence. "And if this reason means war again? If it means blood?" Arya looked at him. "Then we bleed, as we always have, but we bleed with purpose." When the council ended, the two of them stood once more before the godswood. The wind had died, and the snow glittered like a million tiny stars. Jon said quietly, "If you go north, I'll go with you." Arya shook her head. "This road is mine." He grasped her hand. "You're still my sister." "I am," she said softly, "but I'm also something else now." A tear froze upon his cheek. "When will I see you again?" "When the fire and ice are one," she said. She turned then, her cloak swirling like smoke, and walked into the falling snow. The gate opened before her, and the light that followed her out into the night was not torchlight, but something older, purer. From the walls of Winterfell, Jon watched until she vanished into the white horizon, a lone figure blazing faintly against the endless dark. Above, in the far northern sky, the red star burned once more, bright as dawn. And from somewhere beyond the wall came the answering cry of wings. The wind that blew beyond the wall was a thing alive. It howled and whispered, clawed and caressed, carrying with it the sighs of 1,000 winters long dead. Arya Stark pressed through the snow, her cloak drawn tight, the light beneath her skin burning faintly through the gray. The flame within her heart kept her warm, but it also drew the world's attention. Shadows turned their heads when she passed. Ice cracked and hissed beneath her boots. The North knew she had come. The wall had long since fallen. What remained was a jagged ruin of ice, its face blackened and melted from the great war that had ended before her return. The forest beyond stretched endless and silent, a vast grave of trees and white ground. Here the dead had once marched, and here the last of them had been broken. But the land did not forget. No one ever truly left this place unchanged. She had followed the voice in her dreams for 7 nights. It called to her from beyond the Frostfangs, through valleys buried beneath centuries of snow. Each night she saw the same vision, a great hall of ice, a flame burning at its heart, and a dragon coiled within, not of flesh, but of frost. It waited for her. It whispered her name. Arya. The word echoed even now as she trudged onward through the storm. By the 8th day, she found the first signs of life, a scattering of stones, carved long ago by hands not human. Faces stared from the rock, long and thin, their eyes hollow and ancient. The children of the forest had once lived here, or something older still. She touched the carvings as she passed, and the air around them thrummed faintly with warmth. The fire inside her answered. She reached a frozen river that wound like silver through the pines. The ice beneath her feet was glass clear, and through it she could see shadows moving, slow, dark shapes drifting in the depths. When she crouched, she realized they were bones, dragons' bones, 1,000 of them buried in the ice, wings folded, jaws open in eternal silence. She whispered to the wind, "The fire remembers," and something deep beneath the ice stirred in answer. That night, she made camp at the base of a ridge. The fire she built burned blue instead of orange, and its light reflected in her eyes. She did not eat, nor sleep. The wind sang to her in an old tongue, the same she had heard on that far island beyond the western sea. Child of winter, bearer of flame. The two were never meant to be parted. When she looked up, she saw him again, the stranger from the plateau, the one who had spoken of hearts of fire. He stood across the fire, his shape wavering like heat. "You followed the call," he said. "I had no choice," Arya answered. "It led me here. Everything leads here, in the end." He stepped closer, and the flames bent toward him. His face was clearer now, worn and sharp, his eyes pale as snow. "The fire that sleeps within you does not belong to you alone. It is the last breath of the world's beginning. You are its vessel, but it is not whole." Arya's hand went to her chest. "The shard?" He nodded. "One piece of the fire that was broken when the first dragons died. The rest sleeps here, buried in ice. The frost has held it for 1,000 years, but fire cannot be caged forever. It wakes, and when it wakes, it will hunger for its own." "What happens if it finds it?" He looked at her gravely. "Then the world burns anew, or it is reborn." Before she could speak again, he was gone. The wind snuffed the fire, and darkness closed around her. Only the light beneath her skin remained, glowing soft and steady. She rose at dawn and climbed the ridge. The air was colder than she had ever known, but her breath came easy. At the crest, the storm cleared, and she saw it at last. A valley of ice stretched before her, vast as a frozen sea. At its center, a mountain of crystal rose toward the clouds, its peak shrouded in mist. And within the heart of that mountain burned a red glow, faint but alive, like blood beneath glass. The flame within her heart flared in answer. She descended into the valley. As she drew nearer, the ice hummed under her feet. The shards that jutted from the ground seemed to turn, faintly, following her steps. She reached the base of the mountain and placed her palm upon it. The surface was cold, smooth, and impossibly clear. Beneath it, shadows moved, shapes vast and coiling. Dragons. Her breath fogged the glassy surface. "You've slept long enough," she whispered. The mountain shuddered. Cracks spread across its face, glowing red. The ice began to melt, running in rivers around her boots. Steam rose in thick clouds, and the air grew hot. A roar broke the silence, deep and shattering. The ground split, and light burst from the cracks like sunrise. A shape emerged, wings of crystal and flame, eyes of molten gold. It was beautiful and terrible, its body half fire, half ice. Arya stood unmoving as it lowered its head toward her. The heat washed over her, searing yet painless. "Child of winter," it spoke without words. "You have brought the fire home." "What are you?" she asked. "The first and last of my kind, the memory of what the world once was. The frost chained me, the fire freed me." "Why me?" "Because you are both. The blood of wolves carries the cold, but your heart bears the flame. You are balance, and the world will need balance once more." It leaned closer. The air trembled around them. "The time of forgetting ends tonight. The fire remembers, and through you, it will remember everything." The dragon opened its jaws, and light poured forth. Arya did not flinch as the fire struck her. It flowed into her chest, merging with the shard, filling her until the world was nothing but light and sound. She felt the ice in her veins melt. The frost of her blood turned to flame. When the light faded, she stood alone upon the melted plain. The mountain was gone. The valley transformed into a lake that steamed beneath the gray sky. The dragon's voice lingered faintly in the air, fading with the mist. "The fire remembers." Arya looked down at her hands. They glowed faintly, the light ebbing and pulsing with her heartbeat. Around her, the snow began to thaw, revealing green beneath, shoots of grass, the first life the far north had seen in 1,000 years. She turned south, toward the lands of men. The wind carried the scent of smoke, of forests waiting to burn or bloom. Somewhere beyond those hills, Winterfell waited, and Jon. But the world was changing. She could feel it in the air, in the beat of the fire within her chest. The age of ice was ending, and a new dawn had begun. A dawn born of flame and frost, of memory and blood. Arya Stark, last daughter of Winterfell, walked back into the world, the fire of dragons in her heart and the cold of the north in her bones. And high above her, circling once more through the pale sky, the dragon cried out, a sound not of war, but of awakening. The fire remembered, and now, so did the world.